quick refresher. Do you guys remember back in section 4.2 when I gave you a problem that looked like this? I gave you a triangle congruence statement. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. And then I said, what are the 6 congruent corresponding parts?
Yeah.
And then you would say AB would be congruent to what? DE. BC would be congruent to EF. AC would be congruent to DF. Angle A would be congruent to, that was bad congruent sign, angle D. Angle B would be congruent to angle E. And angle C would be congruent to angle F, right? Wasn't that the good old days? And we had to do that. So what we've been doing so far, from 4.3 all the way through 4.5, is we've been doing proofs to get us to congruent triangles, right? So my end game and all of my proofs were these triangles are congruent because of angle side angle, or these triangles are congruent because of hypotenuse leg. These triangles are congruent because of side angle side, and so forth. So forth. Okay. So now what's going to happen, the only thing that's going to change is instead of our prove line having a triangle congruence statement, now our prove line is going to take it one step further. And it will say, well, once we have our congruent triangles, then can you prove that one of these corresponding parts are also congruent? Okay? We can, because if I've got this, then I could say any of these are true, right? So if I've got this, then I can pull out any of my 6 corresponding parts and say that they are also congruent to each other. If I've got this, I can pull out any of my 6 corresponding congruent parts and say that they're congruent to each other. And that comes from CPCTC. You're going to memorize what's CPCTC. Well, if not, then you're going to write it on your blue sheet of paper, CPCTC. So the first C of CPCTC stands for corresponding. The P is parts. There's an invisible of. The next C is congruent. The T is triangles. There's an invisible R. And the last C is congruent. So now let's think about this. Corresponding parts. Okay, well, corresponding parts, KJ, IJ. KH, IH. Those are corresponding parts. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So it's kind of taking us full circle back to 4.2 again. Okay? So the only thing that's going to get added in our proofs, so we've done all this already. So now maybe I will add to it, prove that KH is congruent to IH, and then I would just add a CPCTC at the end. So what we need to make sure we can do is recognize whether the proof is a CPCTC proof or not. If it is, then we'll prove it like we've been proving, then we'll just add an extra line. So it's just adding one extra line to our whole process. So let's go ahead and do this proof together. Set up your T-chart. This one's a nice, easy one. Statements on the left, reasons on the right. Start filling in our given. So angle LSC is congruent to angle RSC. SL is congruent to SR. Given. What should my line 2 be? Sam, you got it? What should my line 2 be? Nate, can you help him out? Line 2 should be what? Good. CS is congruent to CS, reflexive property. Be nice to one another. Exactly. Okay. Do you have 3 congruent parts now? Yeah, they gave us 2 in the given. We just added in the reflexive property. So what theorem proves my triangle's congruent? Side angle side. So my line 3 is going to say that my triangles are congruent because of side angle side. Now the tricky part is you need to come up with the triangle congruent statement yourself. But we've been practicing that, so that should not be no big deal. Name the triangle on the left. How you want to name it?
SLC.
All right, SLC works. If we go SLC, then that would be congruent to SRC. That's an L. So now my triangles are congruent. So then look at my prove line. Look what we were trying to prove. That the angles were congruent. So I guess what I first should have started with is just making a little note for myself that that's a CPCTC proof. So my 4th line is just going to be rewriting my prove line. Angle LCS is congruent to angle RCS because of CPCTC. Corresponding parts, these corresponding parts of congruent triangles, we just said we had congruent triangles, will be congruent. Why are there things flying across the room?
I don't know.
Once you have that, flip on to the back. We'll do a little bit more extensive of a proof together.
A little bit.
Proof on your notes. Go ahead and set up your T-chart. What? So, fill in your given. Angle GED is congruent to angle FED. Angle GDE and angle FDE are right angles. Given. All right, now look at your prove line. What am I trying to prove? Am I proving triangles congruent to each other?
What is that little thing between the G and E?
That's my and symbol.
Oh, and? Okay.
How would you make an and symbol?
I just write and.
Like that?
I just write the and.
What was your and symbol before?
How do you do that weird thing?
That's my and symbol. What's an and symbol?
I do this.
I don't know. That's my
How do
and
you do
symbol.
the other one? How do you do the
Oh,
other
they're
one?
dissing on you.
It's like,
Like this?
so it's like an 8.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know how to do that. All right, so anyways, look at your prove line. Am I proving triangles congruent to each other? No. So right there, I would write a little CPCTC right next to it to remind me that I'm going to end with a CPCTC.
Wait, how do you know?
So if it's not a triangle congruent to a triangle and it's an angle congruent to an angle or a side congruent to a side, then it's CPCTC.
So if it was like
Oh, CC.
angle 80.
So only if it ends. So if it ends with triangles, it's not.
Correct. All right, so now we're going to prove like we normally do. Reflexive property, vertical angles, what do we have? Reflexive property. So ED is congruent to ED. Reflexive. Okay, so I'm going to put a little tick mark up there on ED. They told us angle GED is congruent to FED, so that's already marked for us. Just looking at the diagram, they put the right angles in too for us. What would be my theorem that I would use? Well, I don't have a hypotenuse and hypotenuse. Angle, side, angle. So for angle, side, angle, I need one set of congruent angles, which I have here. I have a congruent side, so what am I missing? Another angle. Well, where are my other congruent angles?
In the triangle.
So we have this in our proof, we have this. Why do I know that these are congruent? Nope, because they're right angles. If right angles, then congruent,
Oh yeah.
right? So let's say that they're congruent. So angle, GDE is congruent to angle FDE, Owen, if right angles, then congruent, or two congruent, however you want to do it. So now I can say that my triangles are congruent. And we said that they are congruent because of angle, side, angle. So now all I need here is my triangle congruent statement, which we have to make up ourselves. So I'm going to say triangle GED is congruent to, if I go GED, then I should go FED. Normally,
Different than the top one.
huh? Yep, you can have it different than the top one. Normally I would be done, but now my prove line wants me to prove that those segments are congruent. So now I'm just going to add a fifth line that says EF is congruent to EG because of CPCTC. So all of this is the same. These 4 steps are what you should have been able to do. Now we're adding a last step of CPCTC. So